Hi there, and thank you for tuning in to our continuing off-season for Bonfireside Chat, talking about these Souls-like games. Want to let you know if you want to support the network, you can go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv and kick us a couple of bucks a month, up to several bucks a month, and get some cool stuff in return, we think. It is how we can do so many shows across this network about such a wide variety of things, not just video games, but so much else. We're very grateful for the support that we get. So once again, go check out patreon.com/DuckFeedTV. And yeah, hope you like what you see there.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And you're listening to Bonfireside Chat. It is a fuchsia favorite.
Yep, and this week we are starting or continuing our off-season here, talking about games that might be Souls-likes, by talking about Hyper Light Drifter, which is kind of a top-down 8 and 16-bit style action game developed by an indie team that calls themselves Hurt Machine for the PC, Mac, PS4, and Xbox One here last year in 2016.
Yeah. This is something that has been on my radar at least for like a very long time.
Yeah, ever since its Kickstarter back in 2013 or something like that.
I remember just hearing the name and having not thinking. I didn't look at a trailer or anything, just because it's not in my instincts to like watch a game trailer,
right?
Generally, and the thinking it would be an entirely different kind of game. I was like, oh, that's a racing game name, and it's not a racing game.
No.
I don't know why it's called what it is. And this is it's interesting because this, always we try to say why something belongs here. Mm-hmm. And this is something also ended up on our radar because I think that, I had a real journey where I was like, some people are like, it's like a Souls-like. I'm like, cool. And then I played it thinking it was, and it wasn't. And then I was like, I don't like this. And then I like came around on it and now I like it. But it's only kind of should be here. Like there are a couple things it has in common.
Yeah,
but actually, it's not as much of a slam dunk as maybe I thought it would be as far as being Souls-esque.
Yeah, I've got a couple of justifications in the center of the generalities after we get the basic part of this out. But yeah, it's definitely of a different stripe than even the more just kind of like, let's say, hectic Souls-like stuff that we've looked at. This actually forms a pretty good pair with Momodora because they're both of similar fidelities, picking up on kind of different sides of this idea, of like Souls informed indie game.
Yeah. Well, we will get into it.
Yeah.
So the developer has said that his inspirations were not Souls. He says Link to the Past and Diablo. One of those makes sense.
Yeah.
For this, I think. And the overall kind of what you're doing in the game is there are these 4 different hub regions off of a main spoke. You have to head there, defeat the bosses, raise their monolith, and collect enough of these little power nodes.
Yes.
To access the final area.
Yeah. This is top down. It's a very quick game, and you have these 2 primary attacks: either a laser sword that lets you do some, very basic combos. You do these little dashes, and also different
unsalted.
What's
pizza.
that?
Unsalted pizza.
I don't understand what
as the most basic of combos you can do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
It's been forever since I've thought about combos.
Oh, you know pocket comb?
Do you think a comb?
Yeah, you jam a comb.
You jam a comb.
Okay. Yeah, you jam a comb. Jam a comb. Yeah, and you keep a couple snack combs.
Yeah.
In your pocket, and then someone's like, "Hey, do you have a comb?" And it's like, oh, it's spelled the same way, but no. Crunch, and then you move on.
Yeah,
with your tasty self.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. Yeah. It has been literally. It's been so long since I've thought about combos. I think like the last time I had one was like from a concession stand at a Little League game.
This conversation is 100% going to get me to buy combos next time I'm at a convenience store.
Yeah.
The same way that like I get chicken wings inception into my mind and like pretty frequently on the show.
Yeah. Well, you also live next to a very good chicken wing place. So.
And it just the word, it's like I'm the Manchurian I'm like the Munchurian candidate when it comes to snacking on chicken wings. Like it activates my eat phrase and I have to go over there and get some blue dip.
Yep. Oh man, it activates your grill phrase. Yep.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. So yeah, you have the kind of basic combo attacks, and also you have guns, which fortunately you don't have to get ammo. They actually recharge with your slashes, kind of giving you this kind of back and forth. Not forcing you, but encouraging you to mix them up. The guns,
yes,
are really useful.
Yes, and they charge kind of like kinetically. Like I imagine, it reminded me of like No More Heroes.
Yeah,
like when you kind of shake your sword back and forth, like a little thing in there. And you can also, it's slashing your sword at any object, so it doesn't have to be enemies. It's encouraging a mixing up of your tactics, but every area has tons of like bushes and crates and stuff to smash.
Detritus
to get more ammo. Yeah, there's just
eventually tubes of precious life. Yeah,
yeah. Eventually, just fetuses.
Yeah,
that you just smash to get it.
Trenchant commentary.
Yes. You have this little dash thing that I've heard called a drift. In this, and this is your little combat dodge / jump thing that you can do. It's very fast. It only goes in it's unidirectional. Eventually you can kind of upgrade it to do it multiple times in a row, kind of change directions. Use this to dodge and to get through gaps, and you can also kind of power this up with things. This does have iframes. It didn't used to. So there's a lot of I played this at release and I liked it a lot less than I did this version. Like I still have a couple quibbles with this version, but the release version I think is significantly worse. And one of the things about it is it didn't have dodge frames, which like yes, you can just kind of dodge out of the way, but I'm so used to iframes. Like
like that is such an important lesson to learn in Souls, that like dodge isn't just about moving you out of the way, it's about timing so you can take advantage of your iframes.
Yes. Even though it doesn't quite get to the Souls point, you can't dodge through enemies.
Right.
In this, which I reflexively tried to do a few times and was punished for it.
Right. And that's a problem with our inertia when it comes to this.
Again, yeah, exactly. It was coming at this feeling like it was going to be more Soulsy than it was. Yeah. I think, or at least for me.
Yeah. You have kind of limited currency, and this currency kind of encourages you to explore. You're going to primarily use this to upgrade yourself. So, like, the game changes significantly once you get the ability to reflect projectiles with your sword.
Yes,
or to dash through, or to dash through projectiles.
Or any number of, like, the upgrades are all the upgrades part of this is a double-edged sword for me, because like in kind of general terms, because they're all amazingly useful. So you don't have that like, this is a big Ubisoft menu full of shit you don't care about. Oh, shotguns do plus 3% damage, oodalali, they're all meaningful upgrades. The game has a weird difficulty curve because of this though, because you can visit the areas in any order and the game just gets easier. Like a fully upgraded Hyperlight Drifter character is so powerful versus how you start out, and the game doesn't get that much harder. So it is a real downhill slope as far as trickiness goes. Yeah. Largely because of these upgrades where like, just being able to bat projectiles back, all of them are meaningful and huge. And that exploration piece, it's kind of interesting. The way the batteries work is like heart containers. Yeah. You have to get 4 little bits before you get the full battery to spend. So it kind of you can kind of see some Zelda mirroring there. Yeah. Yeah. And like the exploration is actually pretty fun. Like I really enjoy looking at a particular screen and saying like, oh, I could probably like shimmy along that ledge, or I wonder if I can dash to that thing. Like that kind of ended up being the thing I like doing the most in this game was like poking at the edges. The combat's very fun, but like that is about my speed when it comes to this stuff. Yes. Yeah. I like that stuff too. I think that there's a little bit of, with how they reward you for that, is a little bit like inelegant a little bit, but we'll talk about it. Yeah. So the map is somewhere below a regular map and somewhere above like a Fallout map as far as usefulness. Yeah. it is it kind of tells you the general direction things are in, but because you have barriers and cliffs and changes in elevation between you and that thing, it is not always easy to make your way there, which can become frustrating because essentially what this game is a like a scavenger hunt.
Yeah.
Like, go to this wing, you have to beat the boss, which that part's pretty straightforward, but you also have to collect 4 dinguses.
Yeah.
And if you you have this vague notion of where the dinguses are. And the map kind of helps.
Kind of. Like, the quicker you realize that the map is not literal and you intuit the idea that you're looking for both connections and just kind of vaguely outlined landmarks, the quicker you're going to realize that, like, you just have to look at this with your eyes kind of blurred.
It's got this weird level of quantification where your character does not appear one-to-one on the map in any way.
No, it moves around like little stops. Yeah.
Yeah, and you shunt over a large distance. It's like, well, what I wanted to get was between those 2 spots.
Yep.
Why didn't I run into it, or why didn't I find that thing? So it just kind of vaguely tells you this is where you need to spend more time pushing against those seams.
Yeah.
Which I don't really have a problem with it, but it's also near the end when I was like, oh, I'm down 2 of these dinguses to unlock the end game, I got a little frustrated with it.
Yeah,
well, when I needed the map, it failed me a little bit.
Yeah, it's that, like, diminishing possibility of return or whatever. Like, the 100th dingus is going to be harder to find than the first one, just because there are fewer out there, fewer possibilities.
And you don't have to get all the dinguses; you only have to get some of them. But I still, going through the game naturally, I got 13 of the 16 dinguses I needed.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So as you're going about and doing this, trying to find the dinguses, you also get items. So you pick up the battery currency that we mentioned before, and health pickups, which are very limited and lead to, I think, some of the problems that I have with the next point that I have here, which is this is a very, very hard game.
It's really hard. Did you play it on normal or did you play it on easy mode?
So what I did was I said, hey, I'm going to start this on normal, and when I get frustrated, I'm going to lower it down. And I got through the entire North Wing, beat my head up against the boss for about an hour, and said, nope, that's not going to happen. So I took it down to easy. So take away my half of the amulet if you care about that.
Yeah, the Neos are coming, Cole.
No.
I did. I mean, very similar thing where but I had made my first run at it in normal, and then for the serious run for the show, I was like, nah. You don't lose content. It's pretty balanced for the lesser difficulty mode, at least in the beginning. So, like, I realized earlier, I was like, you get all these upgrades, it becomes too easy at the end, or it's like an inverse, difficulty curve. That still kind of speaks of a weirdness to it. I think that, like, what is probably true is that a fully upgraded Hyperlight Drifter is balanced for normal mode from the start. You have to be an upgraded Hyperlight Drifter is balanced for easy mode at the start.
Yeah.
So it still ends up being pretty hard either way. But so you still have this kind of weird crisscross difficulty curve. It's either downhill or flat if you're playing on normal.
Yeah. The biggest difference that I noticed in easy mode was the presence of an extra maximum health unit at the start, which makes a big difference because we're talking about the difference between 4 and 5 hits.
Well, and sometimes, like, tons of things do more than 1 unit of health, of course, too. Yeah. So, like, it makes a very big difference. Talking a little bit about how health works in this game, something that my own preconceptions I had to shatter, and they actually patched this in for a while because other people wanted this. Like, I'm not alone. If people are huge Hyperlight Drifter fans, and I like it too, but if people are huge fans and they're going crazy hearing me talk about it, like, I'm not the only one, because I wanted to work like Estes.
Yep.
Like, I have 3 when I start out from town. I have my 3 no matter what. When I die, I start with my full health to try this encounter again. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
And they patched that in very briefly because other people wanted it to work like Estes. And then they patched it out. They decided they didn't like it. Probably because, it would make things too easy. The other reason is it ruins their exploration structure.
Right.
Because if health kits are the main reason why you want to explore. If you're getting money during all those times, you'll get fully powered in like a third of the time. They have to put something in those nooks and crannies, so they have to have the health system they have.
Yeah.
I still found it early on very frustrating because there is it leaves you with like kind of two options. If you do a very hard encounter, you'll usually start with the number of health that you have when you enter whatever the checkpoint is.
Right.
But if you got through a really hard encounter, you go into a new checkpoint, you have 1 health potion or 0 health potions. You can just get stuck trying that over and over until you decide to go reset the level or grind.
Yeah.
Go back to places. When you go back to town, it repopulates all the health pickups.
Yeah.
So you can do that and you can kind of farm for them, but farming is bad. And so I found it very frustrating. Like the first time I played through it, I was furious at this. I was like, man, you're just going to keep throwing the same fucking super hard encounter at me with no health.
Yeah.
And that's not worth my frustration bucks.
Yep.
And it still kind of does that. Like it's still, but playing on easier mode, having that extra health point, and I think that the pickups might be more frequent as well in easier mode, made a big difference.
Yeah.
And it just like, it made it so the beginning was very hard. The end was fun, not that hard, but still very fun, and made that health system kind of work. But you can kind of see the lattice of how they relate to each other because they need a reason for you to poke at those ledges and corners and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, once I grew my patience callus on this, everything was fine. Like I still got into those places where I was kind of guttering out on health and just again resetting the entire level, but like growing to accept that, hey, this is just the game works and you're going to iterate through it was kind of exactly what I needed in order to get through it for the show.
For me, I mean, did that, and I'm not saying it necessarily did, but just as a question, did that coincide with you getting, like, even the very first upgrade I got made such a big difference to things? Like, so my getting that patience callus or getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I get this. In retrospect and looking at it, it was like, oh, I get it, but it's only partly that. The other thing is, like, I can dash through projectiles now, and that's huge. Okay. Like, your verb set just gets so much more powerful that, like, I didn't know if I was getting more patient or getting more skilled necessarily. I mean, I'm sure there's a little bit of that. Yeah, but I was also just getting a huge new verb set. Like
both of them are happening, but even maybe this is just my own level of skill. I still found myself getting in these shitty little loops, even up to the last one, but like nowhere near as bad as starting from 0 and trying to accelerate beyond. Kind of getting stuck in that churn.
This is going to sound, and this is not me. I mean, keep in mind I played it on easy, and I'm scared of Neo.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to think I'm go ahead.
Also, I'm not complaining about it. It's just something that I had to get over.
Yeah, for sure. It's not objectively a flaw. It's like part of it is expectations, and part of it is. Yeah. But I was going to say, I'm not saying this to do gamer cred because I have those marks against my cred already. But after the first boss, I didn't die again until the last boss. Of the game. So
it wasn't the case for me.
After I could do things, it made sense for me. But I don't know if that means I want those things to be there from the beginning. I don't know how I would fix this, like, game design Gordian knot that this is.
Right. I mean, I forget what upgrades I picked first, but you may have just like won the lottery.
That could be too. Yeah.
Because like even though a lot of this stuff is very useful, like I got a grenade early on, which is useful, but nowhere near as kind of game changing as reflecting projectiles.
Yeah, which is just. I mean, I feel like you could probably argue that should have been in the game,
right?
And that points to like something that is really interesting, and we talked about a lot in the Bloodborne season. Something I pay attention to in games more often is how you handle your reward structure or your upgrade paths, and how those things connect.
Yeah,
because if they had made that a verb from the beginning of the game, which I don't think is a bad idea, that just has connections to everything and disincentivizes exploration, and then they have to come up with something different for all the the batteries they know you're going to spend on that. That's because that's what 12 little battery things you have to find to get that. So like they have to come up with something different for those 12 spots.
Yeah.
Essentially. So it's complicated.
Yeah. I mean, it's just ceiling versus floor.
Yeah. I even getting the first gun that I got made a really big difference too.
And you just find those out in the world too.
Yeah. You get them from beating bosses often, or they're near bosses.
Yeah.
The first one that I got was from the north, and it was after the boss.
Yeah.
But because I think your first gun is kind of trash. So as we mentioned, the game is really tricky. We're kind of going on a side tangent, but that's okay. The main reason why it's tricky is because it puts a lot of things on the screen. So the hardest encounters in this game, and I would say harder than the bosses as well, are these wave-based arena sections where there are just kind of like enemies upon enemies upon enemies. They keep respawning. Several of them have these kind of bullet hell-esque attacks that they do. They'll kind of spread out in a fan. It's not as bullet hell as Gungeon or bullet hell as an actual bullet hell shooter.
Right.
But there's just a lot of things to dodge.
Yep.
And it becomes very tricky.
Yeah, there's a lot of order of operations in there as well, and often between these waves, they will change up the arena as well by raising or lowering walls or dropping out floors, things like that. And also there's no indication of when these waves are going to end. So they become little miniature endurance challenges, and if you don't pace yourself correctly, you can leave yourself depleted of resources. At the very end. Yeah. Winning,
I mean, sometimes I think I don't know if this is an easy mode thing or if this isn't all of them, but I usually find a health or two afterwards.
Yeah.
But that can make a big difference because near the end, when I have 5 health total, or 5 Estises rather, using all of them on one of these encounters and getting refilled up to 2 is still a big deal.
Yes.
That's still a blow.
Yeah.
It's interesting the way these work. And it's one of the things too that I wasn't expecting these when I was expecting a Souls kind of thing because you sometimes have to fight a lot of enemies at once in a Souls game, but it's not like this. This felt like Robotron or something. Yeah. Robotron or Gungeon or something like that. It didn't feel
like Risk of Rain a little bit too. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, like that kind of thing. As opposed to I'm going to consider this enemy and then consider my approach and then execute.
Yeah.
It's much more Twitch action than I expected.
Yes. And there's a little bit they do a pretty good job of introducing the different enemies in a spoke, kind of in a linear fashion, and then mixing them up alongside introducing environmental hazards and mixing them up with that as well. It's just that combination that ends up being the combination and the franticness is where they ratchet up the difficulty on you, as opposed to any one particular thing being complex or difficult to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it does that already. It does mix up things pretty well. I do think there's a dearth of enemies in this game.
Yeah,
I think that
they lean on the goblins, on the vat goblins a little bit much.
Yeah, vat goblins show up a lot, and you deal with enemies the same way a lot of the time.
Yeah,
it's just dodge to the side and attack. It's going to charge or jump or charge or jump really.
Yeah,
enemies, you do a lot of the same thing. So it doesn't have that kind of mix up that maybe it's not that impressive for that aspect for me, but it does an okay job of at least mixing ranged and close combat units.
Yeah.
We mentioned the easy mode coming in later, and the iframe thing as well.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that they made the health act ecstasy, but that makes sense. Yeah. So Gary, let's talk about how this becomes like Souls, because I don't know, when I was putting these notes together, I think that it's pretty superficially like Souls. It leads with its difficulty as a main selling point. I think that is part of what got it funded on Kickstarter a little bit. I think that also that is, along with this creator's story, part of what helped shape the narrative around this game in sites that would cover it. That difficulty mostly leads in practice to just having this iteration to learn how to get, to get through scenarios,
Yeah, sure. It is. So definitely it has that difficulty aspect to kind of relate it to Souls, it has, the main thing, I don't think it actually plays like Souls.
No.
Enemies don't have, there's not stagger really. Enemies will break out of combos. A lot of things I associate with Souls that kind of thoughtfully executed combat, as opposed to you're thrown into a pit of scorpions, figure it out.
Yeah.
Which is how the combat actually works in this game often. So I don't think it plays like Souls in terms of combat at all, other than difficulty. But the way it is a lot like Souls is this idea of an oblique story told through kind of lonesome exploration, and kind of indirectly told.
Right.
And that's the main thing, I think.
Yeah. Atmosphere.
Atmosphere is pretty Soulsy and also phenomenal. We haven't talked about the graphics or sound stuff. We'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
But that stuff is really, really incrable, in case anybody's like, why aren't they talking about the coolest thing about this game?
Yep. We'll get there. Don't worry. I've got so much sugar to lay on that particular part. There's no text in the game outside of tutorial text. Most of your all of your NPCs speak in pictographs. And this even extends to your menus. When you're buying from these shopkeepers, nothing is kind of explained. They just kind of show you a little video or a little diagram of what you're buying. There is text on these coded monoliths that you can activate, but it is in a bizarre codex language. So think like Fez or something like that.
Yeah, that people have deciphered.
Yep.
And I don't like being told to decipher a language in a game. I don't think that's fun for me. And I don't think without that kind of text, I think it's very hard to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Which I think is fine, but it is something where like it's taking its story, like, and not just like the finer points of its story, but its story kind of in total and really, really obscuring it.
Yeah. As
opposed to Souls where like, you can play through Dark Souls 1 and hey, I'm going to go get the 4 Lord Souls because there's this great fire. Like, a lot more going into it. This, nothing really other than what little is in the introductory cutscene. And then you have to put everything together, which is like really, really scant information. Yeah. So it's like an order of magnitude more obscure than Souls, it feels like.
Yeah. At the surface level, it still works. It still conveys the emotion in an abstract way.
100%.
Yeah.
Like I like it more. I started reading up on what the actual story is, and I like it more not knowing. Like I don't think the story is particularly like interesting. Right. I think that the actual just like the weird Shadow of Colossus feeling of like coming across these dead civilizations is the strength. I don't need to know about them in this game.
No, or I don't need to know what they were trying to work together toward and then fail that.
yeah, like that's not particularly meaningful to me. The actual just kind of little tableaus and stuff that you run into are. So it's kind of weird because it sounds like I'm complaining about it, but I'm really not. It's worth pointing out exactly how obscure the storytelling is.
Yes. Yeah.
In this game, it's there. It's just very, very obscure.
Yes. Something else that kind of ties this a little bit to Souls, at least in terms of, say, like the undead curse. Your main character, the drifter, kind of part of this nomadic tribe of people, who just kind of go around cutting stuff up with lightsabers. He suffers from a terminal illness, and that is what's making him kind of cough up blood. And hallucinate every once in a while, and it's kind of implied that he's here seeking a cure. And that's kind of not so much stated in the in the game itself. You would think he would want to cure himself, but that like was in the Kickstarter text in the video, and also just in the meta story around it.
Yeah, it's he's got like tech flu.
Yeah.
It's pretty hard to. The weird thing
he's going to turn into a cable.
He's warlocked. He's warlocked. The weird thing too is the fact that there's like these screen distortions and everything. When I first played this, I was sure it was a simulation because like the screen distorts and like in digital, like kind of digitally, like there are digital effects that make this seem like it's fake. Along with the kind of like the super kind of hyper realized color palette and elevated color palette and stuff. I was like, oh, this is like I'm jacked into something. Everything. There's kind of this weird like mix of like technology and organics.
Yes,
to some of these things.
Yeah. This game was a Kickstarter success story, kind of one of the later entries in that huge wave of indies that kicked off like between 2012 and 2013. They asked for 27,000 and ended up getting just over 600,000 instead. People really kind of jumped on board with this. And so the scope of the game was kind of massively expanded, and that combined with the kind of creative director's health problems led it to go a little bit over on time as they are on timeline as they put it together.
Yes, it's a cool story. That he did that and stuff. It's a really neat kind of personal work, and it's cool to see where it comes from.
Yeah.
I'll find one of those and put it in the show notes.
Yeah,
something that explains it.
The basic idea is Alex Preston, who's the main guy behind this, the person who came up with the idea and kind of led this team. Some of which were like volunteers from the LA area, kind of game dev scene. He put this together, and it's kind of built around this his own struggles with kind of like heart conditions and autoimmune conditions, and just he's been in a pretty bad way for most of his life, and so this is kind of he wanted to make this game to communicate a little bit of what that's about, and that's admirable as a goal.
Yeah, I think that's cool.
Yeah.
The game. So the main thing and the first thing you're going to notice when you play it, and a big reason why I think that it is, as popular as it's been. Not the only reason, because it's a good game, but one of the reasons why it's has such a draw is because it is hands down, without exaggeration, one of the prettiest games I've ever played.
Yes.
I think that they're, as far as kind of art style and aesthetics go, visually, this is really top of the pops.
Yeah, this is it falls right into a sweet spot for just being fucking admirable. And
yes.
It's in the way they pulled this off, and they make so many great choices with color.
The color thing is huge. Like it's the secret weapon of this game.
Yeah, is
using colors that you don't see elsewise, that are just bright and vibrant and like surreal.
Yeah.
And the level of, because it's pixel art, but I'm not bored with the gorgeous pixel art. It's not like, oh, fuck you, owl boy. Like I think like you can do really, really amazing pixel work.
Yeah.
Obviously. This is not that though. This is more stylized, and it looks like another world, or out of this world a little bit. Like it's got that kind of like those flat kind of characters that are still so animated in a way that they're not like rotoscoped like that was. Mm-hmm. But it's got that kind of feel to it, especially in the intro, I think.
Yeah.
And it's just an aesthetic that's just like crazy good.
Yeah. Like I immediately caught into it, and this is a comparison that's been made elsewhere, because it reminds me of Super Brother Sword and Sorcery, except where that was incredibly muted in the color palette, and the animation and character models were a little bit simplistic. This takes both of those dials, turns them to max, and then rips them off.
Yeah. It is. I love the way that Sword and Sorcery looks. I like the way this looks better.
Yes.
Like the color is really what does it for me, because a weird secret to this game is that individual elements of like enemies and stuff like that, I don't think are actually that cool. Mm-hmm. It's almost all the level of fidelity in the color. Yeah. Like there's a part where I'm like fighting frogs in rice patty hats. This isn't cool. Like these things don't look cool. Like there's a lot of individual enemies I think are, oh, this is a b-boy bird sorcerer. Okay. I don't think they're good.
Both of those things sound pretty cool to me. I'm lame.
I have no interest in fighting b-boy birds or ninja frogs. I think that's bad and dumb. It doesn't feel cool to me. But they still, like, the world itself, the character and the backgrounds and stuff having this kind of like intense color palette, like this Proteus color palette, just kind of is mind-blowing and good to me. I really love it.
Yeah, it's unassailable. And the music is, I don't know, like this is one of the best game soundtracks I've heard in a while, mostly because it speaks a lot to my particular taste for ambient kind of stuff, like dissonant ambient music. It's done by Disaster Piece, prolific indie game soundtracksman. And yeah, I've been listening to it just on repeat while I've been working and writing and stuff. Yeah,
that's definitely a cool thing rather than a Gary thing. Yeah, like the soundtrack doesn't do a lot for me. Yeah, but partly because I kind of wanted, like, I feel like during the fights and stuff, if something like slightly more propulsive and less ambient would have been good.
Yeah.
I would have done it for me. But I other than the main, like, weird thing, that, like, mystery theme that plays during cutscenes during this, I don't remember any of the music from it. But that's a personal proclivity thing. Yep. Other people really, really love it as well, other than you. So I get it. So the lots of, tons of style points, just a beautiful game, lots of kind of panache. But if we haven't made this totally clear, there's a little bit of reservations about the game that we have. So we should make that clear up front. Yeah. Those kind of inelegancies we're talking about, some of the difficulty things that feel a little bit overly harsh or just a little bit frustrating, which I think comes with a game. We talked about this earlier, but like is marketed based on difficulty. Yeah. Like that's becoming a thing that I didn't realize was a real frustration for me, that I'm now kind of realizing, like, my reaction to that is fuck you. Like a winky, because like the first achievement you get when you die, it's like, nothing's ever easy, is it? And my just, it's fuck you. Like I hate that. Like there was a time where I kind of thought it was kind of cute. This is Dark Souls. Now it makes me want to die, and it's very frustrating. And so the throttle that you have to play to make something hard and not a little bit irritating is tricky. Yes. And this game doesn't do it perfectly all the time.
So I'm not quite sure what this first episode is going to cover. This is a bizarrely kind of paced and lengthed game where we know it needs to be 2 episodes, but the cutoff point is kind of unsure. So Gary, let's take a look at where we're at after this first area. These are both going to be kind of shorter episodes.
Yeah. And that's to let us get time to play Salt while
Yes.
we still do watch out for fireballs and stuff. So
Yeah.
we warned you. So let's start with the intro.
Yes, Gary, this intro makes such a good sell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is incredible. Again, just like jaw-dropping. Jaw-droppingly beautiful. We start off with this like weird symbol floating above the world, and again, it has that kind of Shadow of the Colossus sense of scale.
Yeah.
Weirdness, until it eventually explodes.
Yeah, and kind of creates this like webbing of energy over top of the actual like continents that we see there.
Yes.
And
Some
then
kind of a cataclysm. It looks like it's now like this is the post-apocalyptic event.
Yeah,
Is what it felt like to me.
Yeah, like we're seeing like some of the stuff that leads up to this, and there will be in the second episode before we get to the very finale, we're going to see what a bunch of this stuff actually kind of represents. And,
Yes.
and what's happening here. But it cuts to this very stylized close-up of our drifter standing up in this sea of blood as bodies flash in around him, and this darkness beast fights and then kind of infects him, and he starts breaking down coughing as a result of this. Like the timeline on this is incredibly it's kind of like shutter cut almost. Like it's jumping back and forth. You're not sure what the actual order of events is, but it's very stylish.
Yep. And he this kind of like gigantic beast shows up. This monster, Anubis looking thing.
Yeah.
Kind of black beast kind of comes up behind him, and he fights it.
Mm-hmm.
Does a kind of anime sword slash through it. Then it flashes, and we're not sure exactly when this is. As he runs up the stairs to see these titans, and we saw them in the background after the explosion, kind of walking around. But you see, we're staying in front of these titans, which are obviously or look like they're very inspired by
Nausicaa.
whatever that. Not Nausicaa. The new hotness anime with the titans.
Oh, Attack on Titan.
Yeah, like because the first one has these kind of like tech stuff on its skin that kind of looks like muscle. So this looked like an Attack on Titan to me a little bit.
Yeah.
And then they rot away.
Yep. A flash of light, like all of their energy escapes from them, and they rot away. And then we're introduced to our friend, the Cosmic Jackal, who appears.
Bubastis.
What's that?
Bubastis. Like the cat creature from The Watchmen.
Oh, okay.
Like Adrian Veidt's Ozymandias' cat thing.
There we go. Yeah, it's been a while since I've read The Watchmen, and I'm too afraid to read it again.
It's good.
No, I know it's good. I know it's going to be great. It just would remind me too much of what's happening now.
Oh, I guess that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's incredibly sad. They introduced vaping in it. So it's
the monster, Alan Moore.
Yeah, Alan Moore predicted the rise of the vape tricks. The vape tricks got reloaded. Alan Moore.
But our friend the Space Coyote appears after these huge pillars emerge from the sea of blood. Again, just rising up. There's a really cool parallax effect as the door opens and the drifter is overcome by these black tendrils. All of this has a little bit of basis in kind of who we end up ultimately fighting in this, but as it stands, it is just a slideshow of bizarre imagery that kind of shows that our character is in a really bad way, and so is the world.
Yes. And I'm down with that.
Yep.
Like again, as a kind of thing where you sit back and wash it over, let it wash over you and don't look for literal meaning. It's pretty perfect.
And we're going to see flashes of this again as we get these hallucinations.
Yeah. So there's a little short kind of tutorial zone where you wake up next to this bonfire, and you're kind of making your way through up to the gates of the city that's going to be your hub. But as you're going through and kind of learning your basic dashes and things like that, you keep getting your tech flu. You keep coughing up blood and stuff. It's weird. The first couple times that happens, I thought it was kind of meaningful and good. I ended up getting so annoyed by the tech flu scenes. There's an animation thing in this game where things, and you find this with beautiful games are, visually super beautiful, where the developers will get kind of in love with their animations, and not allow you to skip them and make them go too quick. So like teleporting, the tech flu thing. A lot of things you need to do kind of regularly to make it way through the game take 3 or 4 seconds every time, and it ended up being really frustrating and adding up. Yeah,
the tech flu thing. So we're going to see it here, and it just quite simply overstays its welcome, especially as because you can go through most of these places in any order, these hallucinations don't add an awful lot. And so you'll be walking along, and then just all of a sudden, oh, my character's staggering, zigzagging, cough, cough, cough. All right, there's going to be the space coyote, and then I'm going to see the city, and then we're back up again. It's kind of a bummer pacing problem, and I feel, I kind of want to pull that punch because I know it's related to what this, that whole sickness thing is related to something the creator struggles with. I just wish that it was more additive whenever it showed up.
Yeah. That's really what it is it doesn't add up too much. The fact that you can do these areas, there is a rhythm to it where you're going to get hit by the tech flu kind of around the same time in every single one of these spokes.
Yeah, it's like on your way to the warp point.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's weird because it's a game like that's symbolically about that, and that he put a lot of his own experiences with that into the game. It's cool that it's there, but I think it would have been better as a side kind of sidecar to it, because the rest of the game doesn't feel like it's about that.
No, the rest of the game is about you never touching the ground as you kill thousands of monsters.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like the surface, like the actual surface level stuff that you're doing is really engaging and strong, and they're at odds.
Yeah.
The things that when you're spending the time watching your guy cough and stumble around and not be able to move at your full speed, is time you're not engaging with the game's core systems, which are really satisfying and good when they work.
Yeah.
So.
But this coughing fit, after you have kind of learned about the shooting system and the attack system, things like that, flipping switches from a distance, leads you to pass out, and you're rescued by this other drifter, somebody who looks very similar to you. He also has a little option that is floating around by him. We
didn't talk about the option.
Yeah, it just gives you like alerts, right? Like it'll show you button prompts and stuff.
Yeah, it's your interface. It's your way you're interfacing with the world.
Yeah.
You're a lot like Cable. You have this like little professor thing, that kind of takes care of you. But it's going to tell you kind of when there are secrets, and it's the way you activate elevators and pick up health and do more or less everything.
Yeah.
This little guy.
Yeah, but this pink drifter ends up being your Solaire. He'll be kind of going ahead of you, and you're going to see this person a lot more. As it stands, he rescues you, takes you to his house, and then kind of sets you up with some pictographs of what your goal is going to be, which is to activate these modules. Yes.
You start out in town. There's not a lot to do in town initially. It has shops, but you don't have any money. It has people who will kind of sometimes will talk to you in these kind of little pictographs. Sometimes they'll just kind of make little noises by you. It is a world of animal people.
Yes.
So most of the people are half human, half animal hybrids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
kind of thing.
And they're like refugees from these from these distant lands that we're going to end up going to. They're very lovingly rendered, especially when you go into the shops themselves. Like it's a little bit of like an Undertale thing. Like you're going to see your cool rabbit man, like with his arms crossed, leaning against the counter as you select what what dash upgrades you want.
Yeah, and the cool gun guy.
Yeah.
The guy behind the gun, the guy who looks like Clint Eastwood, who's in the gun section. These are pretty neat. Yeah. Spoiler, the same thing happened in all four of these branches. Something came along and subjugated a people.
Yep.
Like, the end. I wish there was a little bit more variety to what we were doing.
Yeah.
Other than literally just fighting off an invading force in, 4 distinct invading forces from 4 different spokes.
Right.
So let's, I'm glad, conventional wisdom is to go east first in this game. I think that's harder. I went north first as well, like you did.
Yeah.
And I think it's the easiest path.
Yeah, everything about north is easier, except for like one of the modules that shows you to get to, and also the boss. The boss is considered to be the hardest of the starting 3 that you can get to.
Yeah. It was the only, other than the last boss, it's the only one that took me multiple tries.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's because it was the first time or not.
Right. Yeah. But you start heading north, and you kind of pass through these little foothills, and then eventually get up into this mountain itself. The story behind this area, this place was originally inhabited by birds, peaceful religious birds who inhabited their monastery at the top of the mountain. But during this cataclysm that we've seen, or leading up to this cataclysm, kind of extremist crows have taken over.
Yep.
And that's who we end up fighting, although they're small remnants of the peaceful people.
Yeah. So the B-boys took over. It's every Republican's nightmare.
Don't you mean the C boys, the Crow boys?
Yeah. Yep. The C boys. It's interesting that this is this bird homeland, because the text that we get. So there's these little monoliths that you can find.
Yeah.
As you get there, that tell the stories that have that glyphs that we were talking about. The 4 lines of text that we have to explore this sentence, like this area, the story. This is literally what we have. Transcendence, faith, immortality. Second line, rifts crafted, dangerous potential. Third line, a foundation for faith and violence. Fourth line, a loss of self, a narrow path traveled. So it's like they're like oblique strategies or something, or like the things that they were like. Let's say, guys, let's like brainstorm some themes for our game. And like that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that the story stuff isn't there. It's just I want to show exactly how disparate it is.
Yeah.
And how kind of like non-direct it is, because you do run into some stuff like here there's these sacrifices.
Yeah.
These like sacrificial tables and stuff. There is some kind of environmental storytelling, but those 4 lines that you have to translate by learning a language, like doing a cipher, are all you get as far as direct text.
Yeah. So like the text will give you the themes. Occasional survivors will give you kind of a snapshot of the moment of kind of the terrible thing that happens, and then the environment does the rest. And hopefully you can connect those 3.
Yeah. The little snapshot at the beginning. Usually you'll run into somebody. This time it is our I think you run into your Solaire friend here, or maybe it's you run into somebody else. You run into another bird.
Like about halfway up the mountain, you find the survivor from the initial from the monastery. He shows you a picture of the boss of this area, the Hierophant, and he talks about how he absconded with an egg from the monastery to like kind of just set up a new civilization elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they'll give you this little, 5 pictures that kind of, again, somebody comes and subjugates a people.
Right.
That's kind of the story for all of them.
Yes. But yeah, you also kind of halfway up this, you find your pink drifter, who's kind of clearing, or at least moving ahead of you, and kind of tells stories of their own travels. The pink drifter also serves a very important purpose, because they will highlight different modules for you. So like the 4 that you can maybe not most easily get, but the 4 that are like canonical for the game are highlighted for you.
Yeah, and in each of these spokes there's 8 total. I don't know if you get something for getting all of them, if there's any, or it's just like a nod to non-linearity.
Yeah, I think that what you end up getting is access to new costumes, and the new costumes come with different abilities.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So I just got the minimum for this, but it's good to have the 4 of them pointed out at the very least, so it's not entirely just kind of combing the area.
Yeah.
While you're doing this, it is overrun by these b-boy crows. As you mentioned, they've got like hoodies. They kind of like stand with a cool, like they're staying behind, I don't know, Chuck D.
They do that cool little kid and play move where they jump through the hoop made of their arms.
The Running Man? Yeah. They're often seen skateboarding down the street with a yo-yo in each hand.
Last time it was 2 ice cream cones.
These are a little bit more street. They don't got time for sweets.
Yep. No, I mean, that's what their tattoo says. Streets, not sweets.
Yeah. Bird in the street, bird without sweets.
but these guys, outside of the basic goblin people who you're going to be fighting on the way up here, they introduce another wrinkle. You can only really attack them when they're about to dive bomb you. They will fly up and then make this little swoop, and so you have to be very canny with your timing.
Right. And timing is kind of the name of the game.
Yeah.
For these guys.
Yeah. There's an amazing shot as you're climbing the mountain of like the dead Titan kind of climbing up. You get the sense that the bird people in the monastery like defeated him before he reached them.
Yeah, it kind of looks like that. I don't really know what the Titans are in this. Like
the Titans were creations of the precursor race, the librarians, the ghost people who will show you the monolith, also the people who wrote the monoliths, and they were revived by the lizard people in the cataclysm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because they revived. They end up going away. There's also a skeleton of something that is the lore stuff that I was reading. We're saying that's not one of the Titans. That's off to the west. That you go through. That's another giant thing that was like perhaps fought with the Titans. Things like that. Like it's not direct. Like there's a lot of lore interpretation stuff for this game. So I'd read that before. The idea that the Titans were antagonistic to because what it looks like is a civilization that is built up around this thing that was defeated more than something that like actively fought it. Like there's trees growing around it and stuff. It's like it ends up, and not necessarily this one, but they tend to be kind of part of the infrastructure. Mm-hmm. The one to the east is like underwater, where it would be under these platforms you'd have to build above it.
Yeah.
So the sense I got were these things that died kind of prehistorically and just kind of never rot. Mm-hmm. And are just kind of part of the landscape.
Yeah. The thing that makes me place them sooner is actually the one you find in the west, or at least not the one you find, not the one you find, but a pictogram of the raccoon people fighting one of the Titans. Mm. The idea is that like in the more modern era, the big bad revived them as part of his goal to do his things. Yes, to do evil. Yeah.
Yeah, perhaps.
Maybe. I don't know. It's hard to know. I just have that one video that I watched.
It doesn't end up mattering that much. The actual effect of coming across this gigantic dead thing is really phenomenal. Like, I always think about the opening arc in Warren Ellis's Planetary, mm-hmm. where they have the island where like all of like Japanese, like all the Godzillas and Mothras and stuff go to die.
Yeah.
So there's just this island and it looks like normal. And they crest this hill and there's just like a dead Godzilla lying on the ground, rotting.
Yeah.
And then it's just like there's this like elephant graveyard for these monsters.
Yeah. The
reminds me of
the Arca Kaiju Pillow.
Yeah. Hey, that's pretty good.
Maybe.
Pretty good. Yeah.
But yeah, it's around here where you find your pink drifter, and also you get your first coughing fit, and the monolith and the shaman that we talked about before. Our shaman with his little bird friends as he's like posted up like right underneath the beaks. I was about to say noses, but then somebody would have corrected me of his oppressors.
Yeah. The you also run into your jackal friend. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of weird because the rhythm is the same for any of these paths. About halfway through, you run into Pink Drifter. About halfway through, you run into the Jackal.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder whether this game gains a whole lot from being nonlinear. Mm-hmm. If there could have been more story development with the sickness and with the Jackal and with the Pink Drifter, if any encounter couldn't literally be your first.
Right. Yeah. Or if they would just flag them and say, okay, on your first encounter with any of these, it'll do this particular thing. And then on your second encounter, it'll do this. And then you just change up the location by which one you choose.
Yeah. Yep. I kept expecting to reunite with my Jackal buddy. Because I was like, we went into that door earlier together. Like, we're buddies. You know,
come on, just quit teasing me. I know you're leading me to all the stuff that I need to see, but
yeah, it would have been a very cool thing to. Well, I mean, he just kind of walks away from you.
Right.
The stuff you need to see is anything that's further along the path than you are.
Find your soulmate.
I don't know that
Homer.
He's. Yeah. I don't necessarily think that he's leading you anything in this game.
Yeah.
It looks like he just kind of walks away when you show up. But I love I really thought I was like, oh, is this going to build to eventually me getting into a fight with this cat on my side? Mm-hmm. That'd be cool. But that doesn't happen.
No.
Yeah. So you're finding those 4 modules, as we mentioned. These are these little like things in the ground you lift up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like you're removing some kind of weird embryo in an alien movie as you pull them out. The first one is placed right outside the boss arena, or what is highlighted as the boss arena, which leads me to believe that yes, this is probably one of the first places you're meant to go, because like placing one of these on the main path and encouraging you to use it is a pretty good tutorial moment, actually. Like, okay, yes, this is one of the goals. You can check the map and see that after you do this, that thing is no longer colored. So there we go. Like that is what we're going after.
It it's kind of interesting the way too that they're not. It's not just like, can you explore, and just find these 4 of these 8 things you need. They're gated as well.
Yeah.
Because there'll be doors that you can only open either when you find a key a little bit later, or when you have a certain number of these nodes.
Right.
Could you puzzle out, or did you, from like a design, what does that add? Did you figure that out? Because for me, it felt arbitrary and dumb.
There was nothing in the progression of them that actually felt like it added anything. There must have been a reason. I just couldn't discern it.
I thought like if the idea was, we want you to have gotten these 3 modules because before you tackle this 4th one, because this will be a harder area, or this will be like a lore significant area, something like that. And there's a little bit of storytelling that happens behind some of these doors,
right?
That you don't see elsewhere. Sometimes there's not, though. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of made it felt counter to the idea of like, you just had to go through this area and catch 4 of these 8 things.
Right.
It means you're very likely to catch a certain 4 and much more unlikely to catch the other 4. It kind of like, counteracted that nonlinearity or that kind of freedom.
Yeah,
part of it.
So there's a downside and an upside. The downside is it feels a little bit artificial. In terms of, gating you in a game that is about exploration like this. The possible upside is that it's showing you a critical path. If something is behind a locked door, you want to get behind that locked door.
You don't have to, though.
Yeah.
Like, you can go through it without doing it at all. Mm-hmm. So when I had all 4 of my nodes, went back to a locked door thinking like, oh, cool, I could finally unlock this. And the reward was a 5th node.
Yeah. That
was like literally superfluous to that area, like was very disappointing, and kind of fucks with that reward structure. It's kind of like all these little things that we're talking about, these little tiny things. And it's probably seems like pointless nitpicking to a lot of people. And I understand that, but I think it does add up to something that's like a little bit of just rough around the edgesness of this game that is hard to kind of shake off. Yeah. These like little doubts that like you don't really, in the moment to moment, you're not going to notice them. But when I start thinking about some of these decisions, it's like, oh, they did this because if they didn't, it would mess up this, which is like not usually a good reason to add something to a game.
Right. Well, I mean, and what we're commenting on here is like structural, almost like meta stuff. It's about the kind of connective tissue of the game as opposed to what I think a lot of people who are here for this, a lot of people who are here for Hyper Light Drifter are here for the stuff that we're kind of talking around because it's hard to talk about these individual encounters. That do have this action bullet hell kind of style, right? I think that is the draw for a lot of people, and we're kind of talking about a different game than the one a lot of people showed up to play. Yeah, and that stuff, mostly worked for me as well. Like that kind of the things that they're coming for, I also liked, or liked most of the time, and got into. It's just that kind of close examination of some of these things just makes it. Whether the Estus and the way that, or the healing items and the way this works and stuff. There's these little things of like, I just don't really know what this does. And it obviously was enough of an impact to where like, I did notice it. Yeah. Like it did impact my enjoyment without ruining anything. Yeah. I think it stops this game from truly being great. For me at least. Yeah. These little rough edges. Yep. It stops it from being as successful as it could be on all levels of Zoom. Yes. No. Yeah. It does make it's kind of not necessarily the way you're thinking of it, but it does make a interesting contrast with Momodora, where Momodora is, I think, objectively a less ambitious game, but I think accomplishes all of its goals, where this is a little bit more ambitious. Like this idea of like, how can we tell this story with like literally 16 lines, and have this thing, and it doesn't accomplish all of its goals. Right. And then that gets down into the slurry of values, right? Like which of those do you value? Swinging for the fences are missing, or getting a line drive. Yeah, and the swinging for the fences part of this too, because the part of this game that most people come to it for, that I think is you're not unquestionably successful, but one of the things that what the game is about, right? Like when you're talking about how the game isn't really about coughing. It's about this kind of combat and stuff, is not as unique and noteworthy as maybe it could be. It's still perfectly fine and fun as it is, but it doesn't feel like a totally new kind of thing. Like that part doesn't feel ambitious. The combat in this game doesn't feel ambitious to me. Right. So it's just kind of this weird, like the values are just, it's wiggy wobby. It's wubba dub.
You know, I don't explain it, but it's a little bit hoopy poop.
Are you turning into Rick from Rick and
Whistle,
Morty?
whistle.
Yeah.
Just a little whistle whistle. It's got
Yeah, you know, hubba dubba dub bub.
Yeah, hubba dub dub. Wubba dubba dub. Is that true?
Gosh, Tiny Rick for president. I mean, since we're going full hog on that one, no, you're right. Like, just the thing that is at the very core of this is competent and rewarding.
Yes, but not ambitious.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's not really related to the ways in which this game is ambitious.
Right.
You know, like they're very separate, and that kind of goes into, because we can talk a little bit about these encounters, which, you know, we're, like we said, we're talking around. So that was one of the big things that I wanted a little bit differently in this game. And when I had to kind of shake off my Souls perception, is this game has very segregated combat sections.
Yeah, it's not holistically integrated.
Yes, which is something I really value. Like, I love that about Souls, like where it's like you go down into an area that looks like it's going to be a quiet library, but there's something behind the corner. You know, like that you're always kind of engaging with all of the game systems. You're always exploring. You're always fighting.
Yeah.
In Hyper Light Drifter, you have exploration phase, and then you get to an area, and it's like, oh, I see some cover. A turret's going to pop up behind that, and then you go into a wave-based combat. And like, what can be more artificial than waves of enemies that, you know, and a door that opens once they're all dead? Like, it's so gamey, and it's so segregated. It's like it was like the thing that I had a problem with, like in the new Tomb Raider 2, where it's like, oh, here's a stealth section, here's a combat section, here's a navigation challenge section, you know, and never the twain shall meet.
Yeah,
that's a bummer. And that happens a lot here. There are areas, the West, actually, it's weird. The frustrating thing to me was the East and North have very segregated combat areas. The West and South, not as much.
Right.
They do better about this.
Yes.
But it just made me wonder why these areas do this kind of like wave-based arena shit at all. Because every time it happened, those are the biggest difficulty spikes, like the most frustrated I got with the game, and the most like just gamey and silly feeling, and would just like tear me out of the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Of the game. And that's what a lot of this north route is when you're fighting your dive bombing crows and your b-boys.
Yeah. And, you know, most of this stuff happens when you're underground. When you're above ground, at least after you get to kind of the summit where this monastery is, you know, you get down into these compartmentalized, you know, arenas. As you get there, let's talk about a couple of these, couple of at least the different enemies that they introduce. So we talked about the B-boys, and eventually they introduce two different levels of casters, right? Who kind of they attack like magic Koopas a bit.
That's a good way to put it.
By shooting clouds of geometry at you. The larger ones will shoot what I can only call disco floors.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Kind of do that to the floor. We talked about the dive bombing ones. The regular Crow B-boys, you know, we mentioned, but the dive bombing ones are really interesting because they come in from off screen, and it's the way that the encounter design in this section mixes shit up.
Yeah.
Because fighting any of these individual things is pretty easy. The dive bombing crows are what killed me when I died in these combat arenas.
Yeah.
Because they just kind of come from off. You can hit them right before they hit you. You can dodge out of the way, but it's like you're just doing it while you're doing other stuff.
Yeah. And oftentimes they will swoop at you while you're trying to dodge one of these magic Koopa blasts, which are always presaged. Like, they will send out a little like tracer almost with some of these shapes. And then that'll tell you, okay, what direction do I need to dodge and when? And then they'll come in and swoop while you're on the dodge or trying to like resituate yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, it becomes very tricky, and everything takes time too. And we didn't mention this when we talked about shooting, but you have to stop to shoot. You can't move while shooting.
Right.
You have to aim when you shoot. You can kind of just press in the direction and shoot, but it's not very accurate. To get your crosshair or whatever, you have to stop and hold down a button. And then using an Astis also is pretty slow.
Yeah.
Comparatively in a Souls environment, so you're likely to take a hit unless you're very safe when you're doing that. So it just becomes incredibly tricky. And again, I did this with no upgrade, so that's why it was more frustrating. But that's kind of what the combat encounters you're dealing with in this section are.
Yeah.
Some combination of those four things.
Yep. And one of the reasons why, you know, people who are more conversant in bullet hell are probably tearing their hair out right now that we're comparing this. But like, it's very clear to me, like when they start introducing these sections of floor that will disappear underneath you, that like most of what you're encountering in this, especially with caster enemies or with projectiles, is this kind of pattern-based area denial as they're trying to like shunt you around the different areas, you know, to find these safe zones to make your attacks.
Yeah, where you could take a screenshot of the screen and black out the areas you can't be. Yeah, and it's a lot of the screen. You know, and everything moves really quickly too. Like it's very, very fast paced.
Yeah.
So, you know, you kind of, again, you continue moving through these kind of combat encounters, checking out these mountains and these kind of these little houses, this village section, until eventually you get to this underground layer section, which introduces some kind of puzzle platforming stuff.
Yeah.
Is the best way I can kind of put it. That's not really what it is, but
I mean, like, it's gigantic moving blocks that'll kill you instantly.
Yeah. And they just kind of shunt back and forth. Again, they feel very gamey to me.
Yep.
You know, and that feels contrasty to I'm exploring this natural environment that had this conflict and has this story behind it.
Yeah.
You know,
like what these feel like they're trying to do is to, you know, get you very acquainted with the distance and pace of your dodge roll, because you can only really get past these if you dodge roll through them, not through them, but, you know, in front of them. But it's possible to go too far. I hesitate to ascribe any kind of tutorializing to any of these things, given that you can do them in any order. Yeah.
So if like that's the idea, then what about the person who goes here last? Yep. You know, like, then, I mean, you don't really learn it.
Then they get a little bit of that from the other places where these show up. A little bit. Like, this is the highest concentration of them anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I just don't think that it's hard for me to think of anything in these areas as being teaching moments. Yeah. You know, in a way that like I thought that when I played first, I went east and you do the kind of platforming over the encounters or over the water.
Right.
Then I was like, oh, this is teaching my distance that I can go, but that doesn't really help you with these, because the perspective is different and these block off your sight, so you don't know exactly how far you're going. There are a couple of like just cheap shots in these things as well.
Yeah.
You know, and some real basic pattern recognition, like it's a group of 3 blocks and they kind of move in a set pattern that you have to watch. It's not a simple pattern; it's a complicated pattern.
Yeah.
You have to figure out the time to go. The consequence for failure on the blocks is usually not bad. You usually start right at the beginning of the room.
Yeah, usually they have the frequency on the checkpoints for those.
Yeah, which is good. You know, and that might have been an easy mode thing. I don't know. Yeah.
Yep. This also introduces, again, we're just mixing up a lot of these. They introduce these like large pouncing mammal guys that kind of have Dark Souls 2 giant faces a little bit. This is, if not one of the first enemies that will do more than 1 block of health damage to you. Like maybe some of the spells do more.
The spells do, I think.
Yeah. Any of those. So the way New Game Plus works in this, you start out with most of your upgrades, but you only have 2 health. So these guys will one-shot you.
Will one-shot you?
Yeah.
That has no appeal to me.
Yeah.
I kind of like the way these things fight, even though it is very, you know, like I said, once you kind of see the strings on this, like you run into these guys on the west, there's the swordsmen. They're functionally identical.
Yeah.
Like they hesitate for a second, charge forward, you dodge laterally, and then strike them 2 times, then get out of the way.
Yep.
And that's, you know, it's the order of operations for fighting these things, and multiple enemies feel exactly the same.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool from a flavor perspective, but I wanted it to be a little bit more, like I wanted something different to do kind of tactically, I guess.
Yeah.
And there are some enemies that do introduce that, but these are not that.
Right. Yep. This area also introduces turrets to a small extent. They're going to be much more common in the final area.
Yeah. And they are frustrating to me. The way you deal with them is you get past them to press a button.
Yeah.
But as they introduce more and more of them, they introduce enemies that will be in your way while you do so.
Yep.
To kind of get through. And they're always kind of behind cover. Like nothing is the way that like in a Dark Souls game where like I see this enemy before he sees me, I'm going to get like a sniper shot on him and kind of pull him. Hyperlight Drifter hates that. Enemies are always positioned behind cover for your angle of approach.
Yep.
Almost always. So like these, if you can get to one, if they're not, then a turret is there to cover them. Like they're always set up to not allow you to Like on Twitter, I was like, oh, I was expecting this to be more of like a thinking person's action game, and it's not. And some asshole on Ask FM was like, "You fucking arrogant piece of shit." And this is what I mean by that.
I wasn't keep that open
because a lot of times people are nice.
Okay,
it's pretty rare that people are assholes, and you could be an asshole to be just on Twitter too.
Yeah,
But it was like, what I mean by that is not like, oh, this is a game for dumb people who are stupid. I mean that it's not about thinking and like getting this tactical advantage. It's about getting into the arena and having your meat hands be quick.
Yeah.
That's what the contrast is. I wasn't trying to say it was a game for dumb people.
Yeah.
I didn't phrase that, or I didn't coin that phrase, dickhead. Like thinking person shooter, thinking person.
That person. I think that person wrote in or did a review or something like that. I think he got salty on the back of it. Yeah. I didn't make up that phrase though. No,
if you're blaming me for coming up with that phrase, like, it wasn't me.
Yeah.
Anywho, but like, that's what I mean is that like the game actively stops you from trying to get advantages and press, do everything you can to get kind of a tactical win.
Yeah.
It really just wants you up in the shit.
Yeah. It doesn't want you to think or act outside of the arena.
Yeah. And inside the arena, it is very much about reflex, which is fine. It's just a different kind of game that I was expecting, which was, what I said, rando.
Anyway. Yeah. Also, those turrets are usually positioned around platforming sections. Like, even though this is top down, there is platforming. You can, die, you get knocked down, you respawn on the last piece of kind of safe ground. One health down. It's kind of like hitting your golf ball into a water hazard. You just take a penalty stroke.
Yep, a pit hazard.
Yeah.
And then there's another like instant deathmate kind of maze area after this. After another,
piss me the fuck off. Yes. Oh my gosh, It's dark. You can't see anything. Like, I like navigating by sound, but there's one block that you actually have to get behind because it'll push you away. And if you dodge past it, which you have been doing the entire game, you just go into an unescapable death trap. So you have to intuit that I need to be slammed by this one. Yeah,
or you just trial and error it.
Well, I mean,
but this
that's
one,
what I
did. The one I
did.
think it is, because this is behind a door, right?
Yeah,
the one I think it is. Yeah. So I'm not trying to say that makes it harder. I'm saying that like I'm just trying to make sure I did the same one. Yeah. I found it really frustrating too because I don't think that the dark areas in this game are particularly like fun or good.
No.
That doesn't seem to lean into what it wants to do, and doing the smashy blocks in the dark is frustrating.
Yeah.
Eventually you get to the top of this and you get to your boss. It very clearly telegraphs when you're a boss. You get that like Dark Souls feeling of like, oh, this is a big, big door with 3 health pickups next to it. Uh-oh.
Yep. This can't be good. And you walk through into this arena. I love the boss fight for this boss, the Hierophant, because on the frame of the screen, you see his acolytes cheering him on.
Yeah. I would we'll go as far as say I actually like all of the bosses in this game.
Oh, they're pretty good. Yeah,
like a lot. Like I think that the boss fights are actually really good. They do a really good job of not having too many of them. Mm-hmm. They all have very like understandable, clear kind of gimmicks to them. Nothing is repeated.
Yeah.
They're kind of the highlight of the game for me.
Yeah.
So this is the Hierophant, super bird wizard, and he attacks. It is so much like a Enter the Gungeon style boss, where it's really bullet helly. It's really about creating these disco squares that, the floor becomes lava.
Yeah. I mean, so disco square, like think the video for Billie Jean, I think. Where the glowing squares that Michael Jackson walks on, like, or any other number of those things, like it just create these geometric patterns of hurt floors that you have to navigate around where you're not standing on top of them. Like this is just a more complicated, but also more kind of like rigid version of what some of those mini boss crows were doing before. Yeah, and the he summons bird people to dive bomb you as well. During this, kind of do these diving runs. So you have to deal with that while you're dealing with it. He's the trick is really kind of getting close enough to him to attack him. And the way that I ended up fighting the Hierophant largely, and this is probably not the best way to do it because, like I said, this was I died a few times on this, is doing entirely shooting him
and then recharging my gun when the crows came in.
Okay.
So I kept my distance for the most part. If there was an attack of opportunity, like if he got close to me, I could get in before he spread out his waves of magic or create disco floors. I would get in a shot or two.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I used ranged weapons against this guy.
Yeah, so I took advantage of the fact that he had kind of two different modes of attack. So either he put up those grids, like the lines or stripes, or there was kind of the series of disco floors that would chase after you. On the chasing ones, there was nothing keeping me from getting close to him and doing like a hit and run attack while I was avoiding those things. Yeah. So that was kind of how I got my knocks in. In addition to taking a couple of pot shots.
What is the difference with this guy between easy and normal mode, since you did both?
I didn't sense an awful lot of a difference in his actual patterns, and I've watched videos, and it's kind of the same in both of them. So that's good.
yeah. I don't like gating content behind difficulty options, really.
Yeah, like I didn't see any attacks on the videos that I saw, which were pro ass people doing pro ass stuff. I didn't see any attacks that they faced that I did not. Yeah, I may be wrong. Who knows? My powers of observation may be failing me, but yeah,
it's okay.
Yep. But it's a difficult fight, But this is one of the few times, not one of the few times, but like if you end up guttering out on your health, there's no real problem with restarting the area, maxing out your health pickups, and then just resetting the checkpoint outside of it. So you can start with like three health potions or whatever. It's not that big of a deal.
I mean, the problem is you have to go pick up healths.
Yeah.
You still have to go do it, which is
farm vials. Yeah.
I would rather have you just refill on teleport. But again, then you wouldn't have reason to explore, and it's a complicated lattice. It's a bit of scaffolding up against the wall, really. Yep. Beautiful scaffolding. So eventually you beat him. At the end of after you beat one of these guys, you raise the pillar from the ground in this section of the thing, and it kind of creates this like eerie light that glows through. And it's not the end of the level that I always expect it to be. Like oftentimes there's a little bit more.
Yeah, sometimes this happens like 2/3 of the way through. Well, it just depends on where this thing is positioned, and also how many modules you found. So I had to come back, I fought this guy after only finding 3 modules, and I'd come back later to kind of clean up the mess.
I had to come back and get later modules as well. That's where I got that one that's in the darkness pit thing. And this is also, you find somebody with your next gun.
Yes.
Which is like a laser.
It's like your rifle. Yeah.
Yeah. Rifle's a good way to put it. Like you have less ammo, but it moves much quicker. So it's like instant, it's like a hit scan kind of thing as opposed to a projectile.
Right.
And it's much more powerful. And does it pierce? I feel like it pierces.
Possibly. I think maybe piercing might be an upgrade that you get as well.
That could be the case.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually thought all the gun upgrades were just more bullets, but I could be wrong with that.
Yeah.
I use this. So this, I really, really loved it and made a big difference until I got the shotgun, and then I used the shotgun for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
The shotgun is ace.
Yep.
But yeah, that gun makes a difference. By this point, you can go back to town. You have a lot more batteries. You can get some upgrades. We should. Do you want to talk about the upgrades and then call it for the episode, and then next episode have the end game and stuff?
Yeah, let's do that.
So we're not going to go through all of them because a lot of them are pretty. We mentioned them already, and they're kind of modular. But you have 4 different ways you can upgrade your character. 5 different ways: guns, grenades, health, dash, and sword.
Right.
Techniques. And some of them are just kind of combos. You can do like a Zelda style charge attack with your sword.
Yeah, that was never as useful as I wanted it to be.
I didn't get it. I was like, I don't want this.
Like this game is about moving very quickly. I thought it would serve me well against some of like the bigger enemies that would throw in with some of the swarms, but that is not the case.
Yeah, you don't want to stop moving.
Right.
You can get in that same sword thing the dash attack, where if you press attack and dash at the same time, you'll attack through enemies.
Yeah.
So one that allows you to move through enemies with a dash, which is huge in case you get cornered.
Yeah.
And 2, it does like a good amount of damage. So that I ended up finding pretty useful.
Yeah. The dash, I actually found that pretty difficult to execute. I thought that the timing was pretty finicky. I have to admit, I maybe cheated a little bit and mapped on my Steam controller one of the of the back buttons. Like I just mapped that to be A and X.
No.
And just did that. This is where the stamina comes in actually, as well. Your dashes, if you chain them too much, your stamina will run out. Those dash attacks actually drain you pretty significantly.
Yeah, you can't just spam them.
Right.
You can change how many dashes you can do in a row. That's a really useful upgrade that you should get early on.
Yeah.
Being able to dash through projectiles or be protected from projectiles is very useful as well.
Yep. In addition to the one we talked about a lot before, which is being able to reflect some of the bullets. Like, that is indispensable for the final boss, actually.
Yep. You can get more Estus up to a maximum of 5, which is very useful as well.
Yeah.
Because as you get more powerful, you're more likely to have a surplus of Estus that you find out in the world.
Yeah.
So that ended up being able to go into most encounters with full Estus is why I didn't die.
Right.
On later encounters.
Yeah.
You do grenade, which we talked about a little bit, which is just you throw that and it does a lot of damage. It's a grenade. It sounds like a grenade. It's set up on a recharge.
Yes. So, a couple of times in a wave, you'll be able to drop one of these. It's nice to have an area of effect that is independent of where you're actually at. So if you can anticipate where the enemies are going to bunch up, it works pretty well. Does a fair bit of damage. These are nice because they're actually very cheap. So you can upgrade. You can get the first one pretty cheap, and the second one is also pretty cheap as well. So it's not the first one that I would recommend you get, but like, hey, any port in a storm, this damage is basically free beyond a certain point.
I didn't end up actually upgrading my grenade at all.
Oh,
just because I used it, the one that I bought the grenade. But I just ended up upgrading it because I bought other stuff.
Yeah.
And then the gun ones, as we mentioned, you can change the amount of ammo you have.
Yeah.
So getting the shotgun with 5 bullets is, discourse is a-okay finger sign.
Yeah.
So, and that's most of it that you can do. There's a couple, we didn't catch everything, but those are the ways you can do things. And I do, I talked about it being a double-edged sword, but like each of these makes such a huge difference that they're really fun to play with and good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, what I'd encourage is like go for the reflection one, and maybe like dodging through projectiles at the very least. Do not ignore the boring upgrades for either raising your Estus ceiling or your ammo. Those things are going to make a real tangible difference if you're looking for pro strats.
Yeah, it's just from two people played through on easy and really struggled.
No, but I mean, like both of us, talk a lot of the time about like in a tech tree style game, we will look past the like, hey, here's an additional 2.5% damage on your fire attacks in order to get a nice attack that does less damage because somehow those new verbs are more attractive, and they are. But like those think of those those upgrades as like upgrading your vitality or your endurance. Like it doesn't immediately let you use a new weapon, but it does make a huge difference for you.
Yeah, and it really depends on playstyle too. So like I think you and I both are favoring the dash through projectiles and the reflect projectiles power-ups because that's probably how we got hurt the most.
Yeah.
I know that's true for me. If I was fighting melee guys, like, if it was less than 3 of them, I was fine no matter what.
Yeah.
It's just when I was getting sprayed with bullets or turrets that it became hard. Mm-hmm. So having something to do about that made a big difference.
Yeah.
It's also very satisfying to reflect the bullets back.
Yep.
That's like it has that parry feeling a little bit to it. So
it changes so many of the boss fights very drastically.
Boss fights, it adds a little bit of that like puzzle, like thinking man strategy element to some of the areas, especially to the south.
Fucking snob.
Where, yes, you fucking piece of shit. How dare you say that I don't think because I like Twitch action games? What? You love Twitch action games also. What am I gonna do with you?
Sorry.
That's okay. I will carry on. I'm always carrying on an argument in my head 24/7 and it will come out. I'm like Mr. Oogie Boogeyman or whatever from Nightmare Before Christmas, but instead of bugs, I'm filled with arguments with straw men. And then anytime somebody comes to personify one of those straw men, I'm just ready for bear.
Yep.
But it does make, because those area, there are like, these catwalks with these snipers. And having the reflect bullet thing just helps so much. It's just like very fun to stop and kind of be like, fuck you. Like, you take this bullet.
Yep.
You take it.
How do you like it?
You eat it. This is for you. It's your lunch, boy. Son, I packed you a bullet. Eat up, dick face. Do it. So
I don't understand this character you've made.
Listen, my son, I'm going to shoot you.
I'm going to shoot you with your own bullet.
I'm going to take your bullet and I'm going to put it inside you.
Yeah.
Do you like that, my son? Your mother and I conceived you 18 years ago tonight. And therefore you're out on your own with a bullet in the butt. Take it. It's yours. It's your allowance of bullets for the week.
It's your birthright.
Yeah. Here you go. Buy some cigarettes and here, take some bullets back, son. They're yours. I think we'll call it there.
I think we should.
Because we have 3 areas next time, but we did all the generalities and stuff. Yeah. Those will go a little bit quicker. And then there's the end game, which like I don't, the end boss stuff. The actual end area is great.
Yeah.
The actual how it all wraps up in the story, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're gonna kind of pay lip service to that. There are videos you can watch.
Yeah, we'll get to it. If you like this show, the best thing you can do to support it is, so if you have things to say about Hyperlight Drifter, it's too late.
Yes.
But if you have things to say about Salt and Sanctuary, it's not too late. Hit us up at Duckfeed.tv/contact. We'll be doing that after this. There might be a spacer episode in between with like Dark Souls comic or something. We will see. But at the very least, that is the next major game we're covering.
Yes. In terms of the network and stuff, this may be the first episode. Oh, it's definitely the first episode that comes out after File Underwater has released. People seem to be really enjoying that, which I enjoy. People liking things we do. That is the show that Gary and I do about the band REM.
Yes. Yeah. And that's very fun to do. And we think that you'll like it if you like hearing us talk about music, or if you like REM. Or if you just like us. Yeah.
That's at fileunderwater.net, and that was made possible, just like this show is made possible, by our backers at Patreon. So go to patreon.com/duckfeed.tv, and if you have it in you to kick in a couple of bucks a month, you can help make cool stuff like that happen.
Yeah. We really appreciate people who stick with Bonfireside Chat during these off seasons.
Yes.
The future of the show, we're figuring out what like a post Dark Souls Bonfireside Chat looks like exactly. There's a wide array of things that could be. We're not going to stop putting out stuff though in general, and we really appreciate people who come along for the ride. Yeah, kind of with us. If that makes sense. Also of note, I'm very proud to announce and say that our community members are doing a charity event.
Yes,
in March, called Duck Spring. We do Duck Stream during the fall. Everybody wanted to get involved. All the wonderful people who are on that Slack, who are part of our, who are patrons and friends and fans and stuff, wanted to get involved. And they are also doing a weekend live stream to benefit the Transactive Gender Center.
Yes. So that runs from March the 17th through to Monday the 20th. And Gary, both you and I, we have shifts during that. Yeah.
I'm going to be that first Friday night, late night. I'm going to play Isaac. Probably Anti-Birth for several hours. What I might try to do actually is we just recorded the Check It Out Comrade on Afterbirth Plus and Anti-Birth, and I might play them both and try to illustrate the difference. So, like while one of them is wildly impressive and one of them is a mild disappointment.
Yeah,
by doing them back to back.
Yeah. And I'm going to be on Sunday early morning, like 8 a.m. Eastern time in the Greer slot. Not sure quite what I'm playing just yet.
Going to be in the Greer slot, eh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, just that's when Jeremy likes to pop in. He's an 8 a.m. boy, and I'm an 8 a.m. boy too.
It's like a hot tub. It's like going down to the Greer slot. You said it.
Yeah, I suppose.
And I guess I said it that way. But you said it. So.
That's the thing. I don't know why I feel bad.
Listen, Greer, we're gonna get you a slot.
Yeah,
it's your birthday. You're 18, Greer. You get the slot now.
That sounds so bad, but I'm not sure what I'm going to play just yet. It may or may not be a horror-based thing. Maybe something weird on PC, like one of my little like management sim kind of things. I don't know. Well, it'll be announced. Don't worry. Yeah. So we recommend you check that out when that happens. Again, it's a couple weeks out, but your support would be very, very appreciated. There will be a link to donate
and stuff. Watch our social media channels and stuff. And those are just our shifts. Everyone else is doing all kinds of cool stuff. So if you want to see kind of this community that we've had a part in putting together, you know, I'm honored and humbled to say, get to see what they do. There's a wide variety of cool things to watch.
Yes.
Last year it was a success, and we're hoping this year will also be a success.
Yeah, for sure. So keep an eye out for that. More details to come later, the full schedule, et cetera, and on down the line. This is a fantastic time for the network. Very happy with the work that we're doing, and people who stuck around for the off season. I don't know, just feel good. And it's all thanks to you for sticking around and listening.
That's a good time.
Yeah.
So until next time, Cole, what should they do?
They should, I don't know.
Desperate hunger for progress. Distortion of life, devouring body.
Do you want me to put some bongo under that?
Yeah, it's the first victim of the invasion. The first victim of the invasion, son. It's going to be you. Precious moments captured by this crystal. It's yours. I'm going to put it in you.
This crystal is yours. Now. Take it. I don't want to have it anymore.
It is yours. You're 18, and your mother and I are giving you a crystal.
We've waited so long for you to have this crystal.
Now get out of my house, because you don't live here anymore.
No. This roof. Wherever you stand, I will take the roof out from over top of you. You know that I am a certified contractor, son. It's been 18 years.
Me and my strong friends will dismantle your box.
No, we're going to take it apart.
Whatever you live in, my strong boys are going to take away your clothes and your house, and you will be exposed to the elements.
My strong boys were licensed and bonded, and we will ruin you if you do not move quickly, please.
Plumber Jake don't take no shit.
No, Plumber Jake will build you a cage. He'll build you a cage of plumbing.
Pipe cage. Hot pipe, son. Hot pipe.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon.
Hot pipe.
That's the dumbest fucking thing we've ever.
I hope you memorized it, because that's our new outro. that's our new sign off. So
hot pipe, son.
Hot pipe.